Hi, I want to make a very quick video on this idea of this momentum thing that we're doing. How this momentum thing doesn't really matter, how the ends are really the only thing that matter. The momentum is obviously something built into this reality. That's what we're doing. We're a part of this momentum. And the jump, the jump from where we come, the death thing, I mentioned this in another video where you jump and everything in the middle has nothing from our point of view. There's nothing to grasp. It's all ethereal. It's like sand going between our fingers, even if they're closed as tightly as we can. One grain comes at a time. It's going to fall through your fingers. It's not going to stay there, and that goes to the point. It's fleeting. It's going to happen eventually, and even if you can hold on to it, it's still ethereal. It's still to an extent intangible, and that's what our desires are. And the only thing that really matters is this pain and deprivation thing. So when we're experiencing this thing that we call this momentum, and we're in this momentum because obviously when we live, we die, and within life we're experiencing this deprivation. Why go through the negative to get to the positive when it's just, why not stay there when you didn't need the negative to get to the positive, when you can just stay there to begin with, like the life game, going from individual problems inside of life to going to the very problems outside of life. You're going to go right back to the death game, and that's the only thing that matters. You're going to go right back to where you are, and that's the death. And that's the non-existence, and that's exactly where we're going right back to when we no longer exist. So that's what we're doing. We're part of a mechanism that is doing nothing but going right back to where we came from, and that's exactly what we're doing inside of the game of outside of death and life. The things inside of life and death, escaping problems, doing this, avoiding something, so you can build up something more, and avoiding it, and so you can get more satisfaction out of it. And we're being played by the game. The more we try to satisfy these desires, the more we deprivate ourselves to satisfy these desires. You're letting the game control you more when you go through more deprivation, just because you want to get more satisfaction out of something, when in the end it's just about the satisfaction more than that you get, more than how you get to the satisfaction, how much oomph that you get out of the satisfaction. You might as well stay in the satisfaction, or you go stray don't stray as little as you have to when it comes to experiencing some kind of positive out of something. So the point I wanted to make, I think the main point I wanted to make in this video is this a quick idea of reaching some kind of end. Obviously we're playing a game where the momentum is what means something, and it doesn't mean anything, sort of like the life game doesn't mean anything, and the only thing that means anything in the middle is the negative that we experience. So then the positive that we experience, the positive, the zero sum on this side of existence, and jumping in the middle doesn't mean anything, and the existence that we have, the non-existence, when we don't exist, going back to the state of existence that we're part of in this reality, is the death that we experience. So there's nothing more beyond that. Is this jump means nothing, and then it's how we get to the end, and it means something, but it doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But I want to continue this video maybe in just a minute. Thanks. This video because the battery was running out, so I had to find a way to abruptly end the video. So sorry, but I was talking about momentum and how that works, and why it's important when we're discussing something about the reality that we're living in. So this momentum thing, I really don't know how to cover it in any other way than I've been covering it before, but I guess it's about looking from a new perspective when just talking about it, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do when I'm talking about this thing. So yeah, I would say it's kind of like a darkness from which this momentum comes from and ends. In general, I'm speaking mostly of life when it's relevant. It doesn't mean anything in the end, but it means something when it happens. The momentum means something, but in the end it doesn't mean something. Sort of like the pain still matters even though you're dead, but it doesn't matter that you existed. It just matters about the end to the game that we're playing, to the reality we're living in. It's the momentum from which there was a beginning and which there's going to be an end. And that's exactly the thing that matters in this game, is the end and beginning more than anything. It doesn't matter much about the thing that happened in the middle. It just matters that something's going to lead somewhere, and it came from somewhere, and it's about that leap that matters more than anything. So the leap comes from something that's very non-existent, sort of like our non-existence, leading to an existence. Speaking for ourselves, for existing things, it means something from our context. Sort of like it leads to something that ends our context. Our context still exists, it's still important what happened to us, But beyond that, there's nothing more important than that. And then once we die, it's, the end, some kind of end to us, the universe from our perspective, means nothing at that point. The nothingness that we experience is something that we can experience, and that's where it leads, and that's what's important, is the end. Is sort of like the ends justifying the means based on a beginning leading to an end. And that's all that matters, is you led to an end. It doesn't matter how, and almost in a way sort of like your satisfaction. It doesn't matter how you got to your end, it just matters that there was an end. But it does matter how you get to it when it comes to how much pain or some kind of suffering that you have to go through. It does matter when it comes to satisfying a desire. It doesn't really matter in the end, because it's all about getting the desire, and it's more about mitigating from something, and it doesn't matter how much you have to go. It doesn't matter how much you have to go through, unless it does matter, but it doesn't matter in the end how you satisfied it once it's happened. Once you've satisfied something, it's about mitigating against the suffering, and that's almost in a way for the argument when you say that. You're trying to mitigate against the suffering that you're experiencing. So it doesn't matter how you get to the end. So you can get to the end very easily, or you can try to find some way to satisfy your desire as best you can. But in the end, it's about satisfying your desire, especially when it comes to these things like our basal needs, sort of like eating something. It's just about the satisfaction that you get. There's unsatisfied and satisfied. It's satisfied that you eat your meal, and then you're satisfied. How you get there once you're satisfied full is a feeling that you feel no matter what you eat or what you consume. Same thing with whatever sexual desires you have. It's about the satisfaction of no longer feeling sexual about anything. That's the satisfaction of no longer having that thing driving you. It doesn't matter how you get there. It just matters that you take care of it, and that's why all sorts of things can get you by in your life, as opposed to all the things that you think you need to get by in life. And that's exactly the thing. You don't need the things that you necessarily think you need. Sometimes you can live with the things that you don't necessarily think will be satisfying enough to get you through your life, or whatever it may be. Keep the momentum going without becoming too distracted by the things that are going to get you to that satisfaction, as opposed to the actual satisfaction itself. I just want to make sure I make the point, because I know I was looking at this point from a new perspective when I was making another video. I don't know, it's a matter of keeping the perspective that you have. You can say something, go back and look at something, but you can always lose the context in it. You never know. You never know if you're missing something, because your perspective was different, your perception was different when you look at those things. The same thing can look very different from where you were looking at it from before, and now it can look also ordinary. It's about a perception, something that you didn't necessarily put a finger on, but you were going towards something, and now I lost it, I think. But it has to do with this momentum thing, about the jumping thing, and once you jump, it's about the end leading to an end, and everything's why go from the beginning to the end. We're caught up in the momentum. We're caught up in the already happening, sort of like you've already have a blood trail behind you. There's no equilibrium to life. Obviously, if you do this more, you're more likely to satisfy more the longer you wait, and such and so forth and so on. But it's also about the equilibrium, about not having some kind of negative that you can experience. But the life game's based on a negative. And even if it is what you consider some kind of equilibrium from some kind of perspective like that, you're going on an equilibrium is to an extent based on a negative that you have to satisfy. But the equilibrium is the satisfaction of a negative, or say death is the equilibrium that you have to go through some kind of life game to reach a end, which is the death. The equilibrium is death in the end, death in the beginning, non-existence and death, and non-existence really putting death as a word for non-existence once you've existed. And prior to your birth or existence, your conscious existence, that's something that happened before you existed, and that's something that led up to your existence, to a non-existence. Why exist when you can have just not existed, when you're just going to not exist again? Same thing, that's outside of life, considering the whole game is, in general, from our point of view, living and not living, and existing and not existing. And inside the game, it's about why go through some greater negative just to go to get some greater positive, when you can have just been in that greater positive to begin with? Why have to go through all the negative just to satisfy something that could have been satisfied to begin with? Why not just have the positive feeling all the time, as opposed to having to go through the negative to reach the positive? But it's about that journey that you have, and that's the way the mechanism works that makes it so satisfying. You need it. Unfortunately, that's the way the mechanism works, and there's nothing much you can do about it. You're sort of just stuck in the mechanism. The same thing, everything is based on that foundation. Everything is based on that foundation, that mechanism, and there's nothing we can do but change that. There's no medicine or pill we can take to make sure we're happy all the time. The mechanism just doesn't work that way. It's sort of like a drug. A drug helps, but the more you use the drug, the more you become hardened to it. The more you get used to it, and the more you need, and the more you need, and you're going to have to go for more. And you have to go through a greater negative to get to more satisfaction out of the drug that you're taking, and you're going to need more and more to get more and more satisfied. So you're not going to find any satisfaction. It's like a drug. A happy pill is just like a drug. You're going to need more and more to get satisfied. You're going to become addicted, and the addiction, why have the addiction if you didn't need the addiction to begin with? Going back to the question, the momentum thing. We're caught up in the momentum. We're going to lead to an end. The darkness from which this momentum leads us and comes from. And that's exactly the game we're playing. We're playing a game of darkness. And the darkness, and then we have the flashlight, and then we have the flashlight until we reach some kind of end, until the battery runs out, or whatever it may be. Going through the woods at night, trying to avoid all the obstacles in the woods. And once we run out of something, we either reach the end of the woods or we run out of the flashlight. And it's a matter of how we reach through the woods. But it's a matter that the flashlight we can turn on or not turn on, if that's a good metaphor to describe the situation. So it's a matter of the momentum more than anything. That makes this game have any kind of meaning whatsoever. And there's nothing more to this game much. So yes, the darkness in the beginning and the darkness in the end, and that leads from the sorry, just trying to make sure this makes sense. If I made the point I wanted to make, and it has to do with some beginning and end based on a momentum when you didn't have to have it to begin with. Happy pills. You can't have a happy pill like a drug. You'd have to go through more and more, and you get addicted. Why have the addiction to begin with when you didn't need it to begin with? See, I hate when I get lost in videos. That's another frustration I have to deal with. And that's another reason I talk the way I do in videos. So apologies for that. I just need to make sure I get through all my points. Even notes, it doesn't matter. I'm trying to make sure I can perceive. Sometimes I can write something. I can't necessarily remember exactly the way I intended it, unless I write a whole paragraph describing everything. But then again, it gets lost in context. The more you do it, and if you don't write enough, then it gets lost in context because you didn't write the exact thing that you're perceiving. You didn't write enough of a description so you can remember it. So it's always hard to remember. And I'm trying to get through all these ideas at once. One thing leads to another. Stream of consciousness kind of videos where I'm trying to make a point. And sometimes it slurs my speech when I'm talking so fast and trying to get these ideas. I'm distracted by so many different thoughts. It takes away from my function to speak sometimes. I almost sound like I'm having speaking issues. So I apologize for that too. I'm just trying to get through all these ideas. Because one idea leads to another. I remember I think of an idea in the middle of a video and that leads to another thing. But I've gone through that before, I think. So anyway, why have it to begin with? There's no happy pill. It's like a drug, something that you're addicted to, but obviously you're going to be addicted to it unless it's something that just works a one-time use. But then again, it's a happy pill. What are you going to be doing then? What are you going to be driving? You have no problems anymore. You're not going to experience any kind of negative deprivation anymore. And that's the foundation of the game. There's no happy pill that can work. You need that deprivation to make the life game worth living. And the momentum, we're caught up in the momentum. We're caught up in the momentum of the life game. There's an end, there's a beginning. The momentum is based on the thing, the non-needed need is based on this momentum. The momentum creates the need, it creates the purpose, it creates something, this thing that's moving forward based on something, these things, these interactions, these clashes with one another that leads to, we're caught up into it. It obviously has some meaning, there's momentum here, and it's about the beginning and the end. The fact that there was a beginning and an end practically speaking, it does matter to something that's experiencing something in the middle, and it matters even if you're dead, but it matters to us, but to the game and the mechanism at hand, it's the momentum from one end to another. And I know I've gone over this before, I just want to make sure I make the point I'm trying to make. And it leads from the darkness of the momentum of non-existence, saying, from our point of view, and it leads to another darkness, getting caught up in something, going right back to the same game, especially since inside the game we have that experience of avoiding things to satisfy something, and outside of life, generally speaking. Inside of life we do it, and outside of life, the whole life game in general is based on that too, predicated upon that very same concept, leading into something back to the same old thing. And why go through it to begin with when you're just going to go back to the same thing anyway? So I don't want to make this video go on too long. So that's all I want to say. If I remember anything about what I wanted to say anyway, I'll come back to the subject. So thank you, and until next time, bye.